Welcome back, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed the holiday last week, but now that the holiday is over, that means that we're in a new phase of the campaign, and of course, as you probably all already know, that means Bernie is in. So you can see I've rearranged my board a little bit, and I'll kind of explain to you why I have done that in just a moment. But, Bernie here, I've put him on the far left. Bernie technically isn't even a Democrat. At least he caucuses with the Democrat, but he's an independent. He is very, very far left, even more so than Warren, although I think that Warren kind of is trying to portray herself as far left as Bernie. And remember, last week we were speculating that perhaps Kamala Harris and Cory Booker were kind of, playing together and trying to hit some of the other candidates in the field, and we're wondering if Bernie jumps in, will people attack him? And I did see a little bit of that. So I kind of saw two things, and I'll just tell you anecdotally. The first thing that I'm seeing kind of on social media is that there's a lot of people saying that if your candidate doesn't win, you still need to vote for the Democrat. And it seemed like people were talking specifically to the Bernie Sanders supporters. And I think that there's very much a feeling that they're worried that the Bernie Sanders supporters won't turn out and that it will be like last election and they'll lose because of that. And then the other thing that I'm seeing is there's kind of accusations of social media manipulation, like Russian bots and Republicans purposely pushing Bernie to try and divide the Democrat Party. So we'll see how that develops. There was some stories that, all the bot networks that we watch were pushing things about Bernie Sanders that were intended to divide the Democrat Party. That may be true, although I would argue that if anybody's dividing the Democrat Party, it's the Democrat Party themselves. This is a dynamic that I think you're going to see will continue long into the campaign, and when we get into the debates, it might get very fierce, but there appears to be some schism forming where there is the left and the far left. I say that because Kamala Harris, in my mind, has always been very, very far left. And I've known for a long time that she would be a strong contender. But she has kind of been trying to portray herself as more of a moderate this past week. So there were two things that she said in particular. First, she said she is not a Democrat socialist. And the second thing is that she said that we can't have open borders. So these are two issues that I think that the far left would really like to see in their candidates, and she was going against them at a particularly odd time because really this is the time when you want to appeal to the base because everybody's going to forget about what you're saying right now. So for her to be appealing to the moderates is very curious. Perhaps it is because she already considers herself the front runner. But perhaps it is because she realizes that that is the demographic that she needs to attract right now is kind of the more moderate part of the party. And so what you might see is similar to what, kept Obama so strong is this kind of coalition between minority voters and the establishment that pushed Kamala Harris to the top. So that's what we've been seeing, and I think that Kamala Harris is almost as big of a story this week as Bernie getting into the ring, because of that. But there's another story, and let me just read this to you here, because I don't want to insert too much of my opinion into this. Let me just read his words out to you first, and so you can kind of form your own opinion, and then I can tell you how I think this affects the race. All right. This is Kamala Harris's father quoting. Kamala Harris also endorsed marijuana, and she said, that she had smoked, I'm Jamaican. And this is what her father had to say about that. My dear departed grandmothers, whose extraordinary legacy I described in a recent essay on this website, as well as my deceased parents, must be turning in their grave right now to see their family's name, reputation, and proud Jamaican identity being connected in any way, jokingly or not, with the fraudulent stereotype of a pot-smoking joy seeker and in the pursuit of identity politics. Speaking for myself and my immediate Jamaican family, we wish to categorically disassociate ourselves from this travesty. that are super strong words to be hearing coming out of your father when you're running a presidential campaign. This is not helpful. Now, granted, I don't necessarily personally read this as like a hit against his own daughter. I think that if you asked him or if you interviewed him today, he would say that she's really great and that he hopes that she's president and everything like that, but that he just didn't like that one particular thing, and that he doesn't even necessarily completely blame her for saying that she probably didn't mean to make come off that way. So I wouldn't be surprised to later see him maybe walk that comment back a little bit, but I'd say that the damage is already done, and you're going to continue to see people saying that her own family doesn't support her running for president. That's a big liability. Okay, so we need to pay attention to it because of that, but also because there's this identity politics thing going on. Remember, one of the schisms in the Democrat Party is there are the true believers, the socialists, that really think that we need to have these super liberal policies. And then there is the side of the Democrat Party that is very much pushing identity politics. And they want social justice and these sorts of a thing. And Kamala Harris is kind of the embodiment of that identity politics within the Democrat Party right now, and her own father is slamming that. That's super interesting. That's the fight that I think we're going to see, and having your own father on the other side of the party from you is not necessarily a good thing, but maybe it causes her to kind of also reject those identity politics, which I think would be something that would help her overall. All right, so that is Kamala Harris. I think a big story. I still think that she's probably front runner, maybe equal with Bernie and of course Joe Biden if he ever actually jumps in. All right. The next thing I want to talk about, Elizabeth Warren. She made a couple of comments of this week. And I will just read two of them to you here. The first one, talking about Donald Trump. Here's what bothers me. By the time we get to 2020, Donald Trump may not even be president. In fact, he may not even be a free person. So she's very much pushing this idea that maybe Donald Trump is a traitor, or he's going to somehow be indicted and impeached and removed from office. Seems at this point pretty unlikely, but she's definitely trying to appeal to that far left base with that comment, right? And then the other thing that she said is, we must confront the dark history of slavery and government-sanctioned discrimination in this country that has had many consequences, including undermining the ability of black families to build wealth in America for generations. We need systemic structural changes to address that. And she was talking about, doing reparations for black slavery and for Native Americans. This is a very radical idea, even within the Democrat Party that she's endorsing. So right now, she is trying to move as left as she can. She doesn't want Bernie Sanders to out-left her because, she really would have to defeat Bernie first to become the front runner, even on her side of the party. All right, so that's why she's kind of doing that. But like I said, the Elizabeth Warren problem, she is basically the female Mitt Romney, right? She doesn't feel genuine to people, and she doesn't have very good political instincts, and she's already kind of stepped in it and made some very serious mistakes with the whole Indian thing and all of these sorts of things. So I don't think that she's going to win. At least at this time, I would rate her chances definitely not as strong as these three up here. All right. And then let's talk about Joe Biden. Is he going to run? Well, he's been talking to donors. He's been talking to a lot of people, actually. And he's pretty much said, I'm 95% of the way there. So it seems to me that it's almost certain that Joe Biden will jump in the ring. And when he does, he will be a big player. One of the things that I would watch very carefully is how does Obama world react? And does, because some people are thinking that Obama world will align behind Kamala Harris, but they kind of also have some loyalty to Joe Biden, and so there's kind of that thing going along. That could be a key factor. I would say that Obama probably won't endorse anybody until it's like certain. But if he did, that could quite possibly be the end of the race right there. That he would just that person would be the anointed one, and that would be the end of it. All right. So when you see people prominently within the Obama world, previous aides, previous campaign workers, picking one side or the other, pay attention to that. It matters, right? And then just last thing here, it kind of as some comical relief, is Amy. Of course, we got to talk about Amy. Um, Man, listen, I feel for you Democrats out there. All right, listen, every campaign season is crazy. Every party has people in their party running for office that the party probably wish wasn't running for office. There's always that one candidate running for president that just totally steps in it and embarrasses everybody, okay? If you think it's bad, and I mean, this is campaigns are already pretty amusing to me, okay? But just remember, Michelle Bachmann is not running for the nomination of your party, all right? So it could be a lot worse, okay? But Amy, well, so what happened with Amy this week? Well, first of all, they asked her, remember that the knock on her is that she's a hard boss. And so they asked her about it, and she said, well, I am a hard boss. So it's basically like, yep, I do throw binders at people, and I'm abusive to my employees. And like I said last time, if you're running against Donald Trump, and that's kind of one of the knocks on Donald Trump, not a liability that you yourself want to have. That's not a good look for voters. But then there's this story, and I was reading this to my wife the other day. She thought it was really funny, and she usually doesn't follow politics. But here's the story. An aide joining her on a trip to South Carolina in 2008 had procured a salad for his boss while hauling their bags through an airport terminal. But once on board, he delivered the grim news. He had fumbled the plastic eating utensils before reaching the gate, and the crew did not have any forks on such a short flight. What happened next was typical. Miss Klobuchar berated her aide instantly for the slip-up. What happened after was not. She pulled a comb from her bag and began eating the salad with it, according to 4 people familiar with the episode. Then she handed the comb to her staff member with a directive: clean it. There's, man, I mean, what can you say about that story? That's just it's a funny story, and there's other rumors out there about her that I'm not going to go into because I don't want to be spreading things that I believe are false. But I mean, there's lots of stuff about Amy. You know what it reminds me of? But once again, Mitt Romney, which maybe kind of tells you something, like you can have really bad stories out about you and still win, because Mitt Romney, he really stepped in it a few times. But this reminds me of that story where the Romney family was on a road trip, and they had attached their dog kennel to the top of the car, and the dog was riding in the dog kennel, but the dog pooped, and it like got everywhere on the car. And so Mitt Romney went to a car wash and sprayed off the dog and the car and the kennel and everything, and it was presented as like a crisis management, but it was just like an awful story for him. And that's kind of what this thing kind of reminds me of. It's just a really bizarre story that doesn't look too good on the candidate. And like I said, guys, remember, it could be worse. You could have Michelle Bachmann running for your party. Your nominee could be Mitt Romney, which he was not the strongest candidate ever. So yeah, there's just this. I'm really enjoying this campaign season. I really thought that last presidential election was a great election, but this is just looking to be like so much better. So we'll see what happens, but I will catch you guys next week. As always, like, subscribe, share, comment. Especially the comments. I really appreciate the comments. I've been getting a lot of comments from people that I know in real life that have been watching the videos. So I absolutely appreciate the comments. Lots of positive things. I'm glad that these videos are informational to you and that you enjoy watching them. And then, as always, for everybody, I stream every morning when I'm trading, so you can always come and talk to me and ask questions if you want. So hopefully I'll see you then. If I don't see you then, I will see you next week. And in the meantime, stay profitable, friends.